Welcome back, Defenders. We're currently on day 5 of Trump's presidency, and his impact on the war is already being felt. Check out these headlines. We can do it the easy way or the hard way, Trump says to Russia on ending the war in Ukraine. Putin is destroying Russia by not making a deal. Trump threatens tougher measures if Moscow won't accept his terms. Trump tells Putin to make Ukraine deal now or face tariffs and sanctions. So this isn't a one-off. Trump is now saying the exact same thing every day to threaten and antagonize the Russians. Here he is again on Fox News, once again claiming more sanctions could be coming.
And I put out a truth today that's really strong, and I mean it. And if they don't do that, I'm going to put massive tariffs.
Do what?
If they don't settle this war soon, like almost immediately, I'm going to put massive tariffs on Russia and massive taxes and also big sanctions. And I don't want to do that. You know, I love the Russian people. They're great people.
And also big sanctions. Now, the threat of tariffs is meaningless. The United States doesn't really import anything from Russia that we can place tariffs on. But the United States can always place more sanctions, specifically on Russia's oil majors. This is something that Joe Biden was never willing to do. And we got confirmation from Trump's nominee for Treasury Secretary that he's also willing to do this, to cripple Russia's oil majors, if Donald Trump gives the order. In my last video, I broke down this tweet from Trump on Truth Social. Go check out the video if you want the analysis, it's fantastic. But in today's video, we're going to get the reaction. How did ordinary Russians react to this new tough language from Trump now that he's president? Trump comments calling for Kremlin concessions ignites firestorm of Russian objections. Russian information platforms said that the US leader doesn't understand Russian will to fight or firepower. Many were also furious about World War II, which they said Trump got all wrong. So let me first share with you some screenshots from Russian military bloggers, and they're not happy. I really don't like the fact that Trump is showing himself as the master of planet Earth. On the territory of the Russian Federation, we did not elect him. We have our own leader. Here's another one. Here's the translation. Trump's insulting, impudent, and smug statements are, of course, not a call for peace, but an ultimatum. A demonstrative ultimatum so that the whole world can hear, so that if Russia accepts it, running to make peace with terrorists and murderers, Trump will look not like a peacemaker, but like a winner. Here's another one. Well, no miracle happened. Here's the paragraph I want to share. Like I said, better to prepare for the worst. Biden's term will soon be remembered with nostalgia as a thaw. Remember this tweet. So Russian military bloggers are already missing Joe Biden. And of course, they took the bait. Donald Trump deliberately baited the Russians with that tweet about Russia helping the United States win World War II instead of the United States helping Russia win the Great Patriotic War. That's how they frame it in Russia. So Solovyov on his show, he fell for it. He says Trump is clearly a systemic enemy. He has no reason to have any positive contact with us. The message he left is either you immediately come to an agreement or it's very interesting. Because Americans still believe that it was them who won World War II, and we were the ones who helped them. So I'm actually going to defend Trump and say Russia's contribution to World War II was almost meaningless because the United States was always going to get atomic weapons first. The success of the Manhattan Project was always going to culminate before the Germans got the bomb. So even if Moscow fell and Moscow burned and the Russians surrendered, the United States was always going to have atomic weapons first, and they would have used them on the Germans to win the war, even if the Russians were completely defeated. that's all dystopian alternate realities. We can ignore that. I want to share with you the best reaction, and this is from State Duma member Andrei Gurlyov. He's some kind of military officer, but he's also a member of the State Duma. And here's his reaction on Channel 1. This is their 60 Minutes, I think, roundtable show. And check out what he says. Look at what Trump is doing. Let's be honest. Today he stepped out not as the US president, but as the owner of the world. Sasha Sladkov described it correctly. He's acting like a hooligan that hasn't gotten a beating in a long time. What is he doing? Here we've been saying Trump, Trump, but whom is he threatening? Is he threatening us? He started with an ultimatum. Look at what's been shown on some TV channels. Trump will stop this war. It's aired on our TV channels, the Russians, not American ones. This is classic Trump. He is tossing it up. Yeah, he's tossing shit on a fan. You can't talk to Russia this way. I want to say maybe our president should get an account on Twitter and start responding. An even better response would be a nuclear explosion. It's just so rude. How is he talking to us? Who does he think he is talking to? This is a fantastic clip. It's already got 159,000 views from Russian Media Monitor. I'll link the entire thing down below. It's 8 minutes and 41 seconds, so this was highly enjoyable to watch. So how is the world responding? And here's the Telegraph. Trump doesn't side with losers. Trump doesn't side with losers, and right now Putin is a loser. The Russians had every opportunity the last 3 years to win this war, and they failed to do so. If you want to believe that Joe Biden and the Democrats are incredibly weak and ineffective, then why couldn't the Russians win the last 3 years with weak Joe Biden? And this is Time magazine. Donald Trump is right to refuse to be bullied by Vladimir Putin. On what leg do the Russians have to stand about their military accomplishments so far in this war? The Russians today control less territory than they did in summer of 2022. They lost thousands of square kilometers in Kharkiv. They lost the north bank of Kherson, the city of Kherson, and currently Ukraine is controlling territory in Russia's Kursk Oblast. Objectively, the Russians have embarrassed themselves. Donald Trump is not showing them any respect. With that said, we all have to remember who Donald Trump is. Trump hints at carrot stick sanctions policy on Russia, depending on Putin's readiness to negotiate. So what Donald Trump is saying today could be completely different than what he says next week, depending on what Russia says and does. I am not forgetting what Donald Trump has said in the past, calling Zelensky the greatest salesman of all time. Every time he visits the United States, he walks away with a blank check for $100 billion. Trump told Speaker Johnson to block a vote on military aid for Ukraine last year for 6 months. And that's why the Ukrainians lost the city of Avdiivka. So I'm not praising Trump as this saint who's doing the right thing for the right reasons, but Donald Trump definitely can do the right thing for the wrong reasons. And at this point, I'm going to take it, guys. I'm just going to take it. This war has been going on for 3 years. Total casualties on both sides, over 1 million. It doesn't matter what Trump's motivations are, as long as he does the right thing and supports Ukraine. So Putin is increasingly concerned about the state of Russia's economy. This is an article from Reuters. Putin believes that key Ukraine war goals have now been achieved. Stunning. Reuters, citing its sources, reports that Putin believes key war objectives have already been achieved, including securing the land connection from mainland Russia to Crimea and weakening Ukraine's military. It also notes his awareness of the economic strain caused by the war. The article indirectly suggests that these factors might make Putin more inclined to strike a deal with Trump to end the war, given its costs and the claimed achievement of strategic goals. So, of course, this is nonsense coming from this article from Reuters. Putin is starting to worry about having a serious economic collapse in Russia. And no, Russia has not achieved any of their war goals. They still only control about 50 or 60% of the Donetsk Oblast. This entire war was supposed to be about the liberation of the Donbas region. Russia doesn't control the city of Zaporizhia. Russia lost the control of the city of Kherson and the North Bank. Russia never made it to Odessa. Russia never linked up with their forces in Transnistria. And Zelensky is still president of Ukraine. There's been no regime change. Russia has failed at all of their stated objectives when this war began. And after taking hundreds of thousands of casualties, the Russians have gone, we're being generous, 50 kilometers deep into Ukraine. This magenta is where they started. This is how far they've gotten, trying to encircle the city of Pokrovsk. And in 3 years of fighting, hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers dead, they've gone, we'll be generous, 50 kilometers. Trump does not respect this, nor should he. So what's Putin's reaction to this Truth Social tweet, this change in tone? Russia might not have invaded Ukraine if Trump had been president. This is stunning, guys. This entire clip is almost 8 minutes of Putin speaking to this reporter. I'll link the entire thing down below. But he basically rolls over. And he says that he and Trump have a fantastic relationship and that they've cooperated so well in the past concerning their economies, and that if Trump had been president the last 4 years, this war never would have happened. But those evil Democrats stole the 2020 election from Trump. He's doing everything he can to placate and flatter Trump in this 8-minute interview. And I'm going to read for you, I think, the most important part. It's Putin, so he meanders, but here's the part I want to read for you. In this regard, by the way, I doubt that the current president of the United States, Mr. Trump, I repeat, we worked with him during his first term in office. He made some decisions, even if we hear about the possibility of imposing additional sanctions on Russia. I doubt he will make such decisions, which will harm the American economy. He's not only smart, he is a pragmatic person, and I can hardly imagine that decisions will be made on damaging the American economy. Therefore, most likely it is actually better for us to meet up, relying on the realities of today, talk calmly on all those directions, which represents interest for both the United States and Russia. We are ready, but I repeat, the first of all, of course, depends on decisions and choices of the current American administration. No mention of Orshnik, no mention of your heightened state of nuclear readiness to bathe the decadent West in a lake of fire. Now all of a sudden, we're friends, we should meet up, we should talk calmly and come to some kind of agreement. Putin is freaking out. Wow. So what else is Trump doing? U.S. may use frozen Russian assets to force Moscow to negotiate on a peace deal, says Volker. Volker is Trump's former special envoy to Ukraine during his first term. And this is once again something Joe Biden was not willing to do for the last 3 years. But Trump might finally seize these frozen assets in American banks. It's not a large number. Most of Russia's frozen assets are in the UK and the EU. But it's still something like 7, 8, 9 billion, I think, and seize the money, and then Ukraine can use that money to buy weapons. America gets the cash, Ukraine gets the weapons, and Russia doubly loses. This is a pressure point that I think Trump has no problems with. Trump says Russian war in Ukraine will end immediately if OPEC lowers the price of oil. Okay, this is interesting. Sure, why not? OPEC is a cartel that artificially inflates the price of oil to make as much money as possible. And Donald Trump is now speaking as if OPEC will do the United States a favor by producing more, when the United States is OPEC's biggest competition in the world. So this is a weird line of attack, but Trump wants to do it. And he's now calling on OPEC to produce more to cripple Russia.
I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down, which frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do before the election. If the price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately. Right now, the price is high enough that that war will continue. You got to bring down the oil price. You got to end that war.
So I think Russia is a member of OPEC Plus. Russia coordinates with OPEC. I don't know why OPEC officially would vote to do anything like this, but maybe Saudi Arabia is going to make a deal with Trump, and part of this deal, they'll produce more. But why would Saudi Arabia hurt their OPEC Plus member when they haven't done so the last 3 years? It's interesting. I mean, Trump likes just saying things and then seeing how people react. So, okay, we're going to move on. Rutte tells Rubio Trump's demand for increased European defense spending is fair. Mark Rutte had a phone conversation with Marco Rubio on Wednesday and told him that he looked forward to welcoming him to NATO and working together on Ukraine, Russia, and China. To all of my European friends, I know the truth. I know what you've done for Ukraine as far as humanitarian and financial aid. But Donald Trump is going to be annoying about this and say that doesn't count. The only thing that counts is military aid, because the United States has given the most military aid. Either way, it's been 3 years. Europe can be doing more militarily to help support Ukraine at this time, given that the Russians are invading Europe with North Korea's help. If we want to guarantee the safety and security of Moldova, Romania, Poland, the Baltics, Finland, then yes, Europe's going to have to find a way to spend more militarily, not just financial and humanitarian. So here is the Secretary General of NATO saying that there's a lot they can do to work with Trump, to give him basically a win politically.
Ukraine, we need US also to stay involved and to do as much as possible to get Ukraine in a position of strength whenever peace talks start. But I can tell the Europeans, if this new Trump administration is willing to keep on supplying Ukraine with defense industrial from its defense industrial base, the bill will be paid by the Europeans. I'm absolutely convinced of this. We have to be willing to do that because at this moment they are paying more than the Europeans. And here Trump is right. It is a worldwide conflict, yes, but still Ukraine is closer to Europe than to the US.
This is acceptable. The NATO alliance is holding, guys. The Western alliance 1 week into Trump's presidency is holding. This is good news. And check this out. Hungary wobbles on sanctions threat after Trump calls out Putin. So now we have these middle actors like Fico in Slovakia and Orban in Hungary. And these guys are confused. They don't know what to do. Do they side with Putin and the Russians, or do they side with Trump and the Americans? I think Viktor Orban, who loves Trump, he's a big Trump supporter, perhaps was expecting a different tone this week. So Donald Trump has not only pulled the rug out from under the Russians, but also the Hungarians, the Slovaks. There's lots of intermediate countries playing on the fence of both sides who are probably spooked by what Donald Trump has said and done so far this week. And then there's Zelensky. Trump needs to come out on top. Zelensky on U.S. president role in ending the war. Zelensky just gets it. You know, given that he's an actor and a comedian and he's very social media savvy. He understands Trump's objectives, which is to make Trump look good. And anybody who makes Trump look good, Trump then likes and praises and supports. So you're not going to find a bigger supporter of Donald Trump today than President Zelensky. And there's nothing he won't do for his people. There's nothing that President Zelensky won't do to bring safety and security to his country. And he will say and do whatever Donald Trump says if it means continuing military aid and increasing pressure and sanction on the Russians. And you're not going to find a more pro-American country in the world than Ukraine. Global poll finds Ukrainians among the most US-positive nation in the world. This is an easy win for MAGA. If you want Ukraine on your side forever, through thick and thin, life or death, heaven and hell, whatever, let's finish off Russia together. MAGA can do this. Trump has the power, and he seems open to suggestions so far. So this is from Robert Wilkie. He is heading Trump's Pentagon transition team, and he's delivering clear messages on what the Trump administration wants to do. Concerning Putin, stop the war in Ukraine, or we'll give Zelensky everything he needs and will unleash U.S. energy and economic power to bankrupt Russia. Concerning the NATO alliance and the Europeans, they need to start spending about 3% or change their targets for spending, 3% on defense, specifically the nuclear powers. The United Kingdom and France have to increase their militaries. And then special mention of Germany also needing to step up. Concerning Ukraine, this isn't going to go away. The need to start mobilizing 18 to 25-year-olds. And for my Ukrainian viewers, please stop talking like this is a death sentence, that if you conscript or mobilize 18 to 25-year-olds, they're all going to die. Joining the Ukrainian military is not a death sentence, and they don't have to be in combat positions. If Ukraine wants to conscript or mobilize 18 to 25-year-olds, put them in support roles. Put them on the border with Belarus, or, invent some form of national service, whether it's police officer, the railroad network, firefighters, air defense, working in an artillery factory. If you want the United States to continue supporting you, then there shouldn't be any able-bodied men between the ages of 18 and 25 sitting in their parents' basement playing Stalker 2 all day. Mobilize them. This is an easy win, both for Ukraine and for Trump. Let's get to the bad news for Russia. Ukrainian drones strike oil refinery in Ryazan and a microelectronics plant in Bryansk. Ukraine last night launched a coordinated 120 drone assault against multiple Russian regions, hitting a major oil refinery and a critical microelectronics plant. There are videos online. I'm going to link these down below. I can't play for you the videos, that's YouTube policy, but just look at the still images. This was massive. This was a huge hit. Just look at that mushroom cloud. The camera is tilted because the guy is running away, but that is a massive explosion at a Russian oil refinery in Ryazan. This is what the depot and refinery looks like. You can see there's cope cages around all of the containers, but I don't think the cope cages work. For those of you at home playing Russian oil refinery bingo, this is the updated board. The largest 9 refineries, you can see that Ukraine has already struck 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of them. And then as far as the minor refineries and depots, yeah, they continue to be... It can always get worse, Russia. You can stop this war at any time. Ukrainian Marines destroy 7 Russian vehicles with javelins in Kursk. If you want to see some combat footage, I'll link this down below, but this was a Russian armored assault, and 7 armored vehicles were taken out by javelins and NLAWs. Russian military deploys injured troops in Crutch battalions, highlighting manpower crisis. The Russians are doing so bad. They have legit crutch battalions. I'm gonna link the videos down below of Russians who are wounded and on crutches going into meat assaults. Not just one video, not just 2 videos, but 3 different videos. Russian soldiers who are wounded on crutches in broad daylight, charging through open fields in meat assaults near Pokrovsk. This is the mighty Russian military. I'm going to link everything down below. This is pathetic. Russian evacuation ships finally allowed into Syrian port of Tartus, but the Kremlin lease is now canceled. So these warships, they've been floating out in the Mediterranean for almost 2 months, and finally the new Syrian government has said, "You're done, Russia." They canceled this 49-year-old contract because Bashar al-Assad, who signed the contract, fled the country. But the Syrians are going to be nice, and they're going to let the Russians sail into the port one last time, load up as much as they can, and then they got to leave. And they're never going to be allowed to come back. This naval port now belongs to the new government of Syria. Huge defeat for the Russians. Russian coal and steel exports to China shrink in 2024. Your coal and steel exports are weak, Russia. They're weak. Cocaine smuggling into Russia up tenfold since invasion of Ukraine. As the Russian economy and society continues its collapse, a lot of Russians are just choosing to party through the apocalypse. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. European Union pledges $35 billion to Ukraine in 2025. This is part of that $50 billion package. The United States has already delivered their money. UK has done it. Japan has done it. And the European Union is pledging the other $35 billion. It's happened. So, fantastic news. I want to quick mention this Ukrainian documentary, Porcelain War. It's been nominated for an Oscar, Best Documentary. You can watch the trailer online. I'll link it down below, but the video I don't think will be available to the public until after the Oscars. The story follows 3 Ukrainian artists during the war, and I think it has a serious chance of winning Best Documentary. So I think the Oscars are coming up in 2 weeks. If you want to tune in and support Ukraine, hopefully they can get some media attention with a win at the Oscars. Final clip I want to play for you is a Ukrainian man taking his dog for a walk in Kharkiv, and the air raid sirens went off, and you can actually hear a strike in the background. But I want to share with you the reaction of this Ukrainian man's dog.
Короче, ребят, гуляем сейчас с Айсом. Слышите вот этот звук на заднем фоне? Где-то летит, падла. Там. Ебать. На секундочку. На секундочку. Сидеть, Айс. Сидеть. Вот такая вот залупа прилетает очень часто. Хорошо, иди рядом. Все хорошо. И еще где-то летит.
Russia will be defeated. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.